Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. There was a song back in the 80s, and I never forgot the lyrics of this song. It was by the artist Cher, and the song is called If I Could Turn Back Time. And there's a lyric in there that has always stuck with me. Words are like weapons. They can harm sometimes. True words never spoken. We are going to talk about words today, especially those that do harm, specifically verbal abuse. And she is somebody that works with people all the time on all different levels in terms of piloting their lives forward and even helping those who are victims of verbal abuse and even reframing it for those that may use their words in a harmful way. She's behind New Beginnings up in Massachusetts, and so great to have her back here. Our diamond of a decade, Sherri Alexandrovich, is back on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Very good, really good. This is something that you don't hear talked about very often, verbal abuse, but
Right.
it's happening all the time, right?
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that people don't realize either the enormity, its impact, the multitude of ways in which it is. I mean, verbal abuse comes in so many different forms. There's gaslighting,
Mm,
blaming, condescending, discrimination, passive aggression, character assassination, social undermining, disrespect. There's so many different versions of verbal abuse that are so impactful to all of us, especially to young children whose minds and futures are just being formed. And not saying that it's any worse for a child than it is for an adult. But it's such an impactful thing. And people don't realize that the tongue doesn't have any bones, but boy, can it break you. It is such a weaponized organ that we have. And it's so important to just always be mindful of the things that we're saying to other people. The impact of them is so long lasting. It's really just heartbreaking to see.
it's so true.
Mhm.
And even there's been times where we can be in a situation, an argument with someone, and one word was used. And
Mhm.
many times people don't forget what was said to them. I mean, it could be decades later, and one
Mhm.
word could stand out. And I remember the time you called me a blank. We don't forget. And we're communication beings.
Mhm.
It's words that we communicate with. And it's so funny with social media and AI and so many digital advances, it comes
Mhm.
back to the same thing.
Yeah.
Words, whether they come out of your mouth or you use them on paper, on screen, it still comes back thousands of years later. Words. That's it.
Absolutely. And its impact is as bad as physical abuse can be, if not sometimes worse.
Mm,
Just personally speaking, when I think about my history and my childhood and growing up and all of kind of the different variations that I've experienced for myself with the different types of abuse, the verbal abuse, the words, the impact of those are so much more powerful than anything else that I've personally ever experienced. And I don't think that people really give enough attention to its impact and its power. I did a thesis report back at my master's on verbal abuse because I really have felt then, and I think I still feel the same way, that there just isn't enough recognition that's given to it. Because it's such a powerful thing and it's so impacting to people. It could be a snare, it could be a laugh. Those things are just so they come in so many different forms. Bullying, for instance, comes with its own set of enormities, but it all kind of comes from language and speech and the things that we say and the things that we can't take back, like you said, things that you remember that continue to kind of haunt you or that sit in the back of your mind, and it impacts our self-esteem. It impacts our ability to, advocate for ourselves. It impacts our ability to leave, abusive situations that we could be in because we don't feel like we have, we've been beaten down so much verbally that we don't have the strength to
Mhm.
be able to get out of certain situations. And not only just that, the things that we say when we're angry, and we never know when it's the last time we're going to say those things to somebody on the receiving end of it, or the impact of what we say that could result in actions. And, I'm kind of thinking about our cases that we've had this week in the enormity of a couple of different situations that we've experienced where a session has not gone well between two people. And we've had some suicides this week, which have really been extremely impactful for us at the agency and as therapists. And then when you're thinking about the people and the last words that they've exchanged, it's so powerful and so overwhelming. And sometimes we don't mean to say the things that we do and they come out because we're angry or, and what do we do? How do we sit with things like that? And I think that's what's really important for all of us to realize the impact sometimes of what our words are.
Go right back to that song, words are like weapons, they can harm sometimes. The name of the
Mhm.
song is If I Could Turn Back Time. So to your
Right.
point, once you send it out there, you can't turn back time because
Mhm.
it's like firing a gun. Best analogy pops in my head. Once the bullet
Right.
comes out, you've already
Mhm.
fired the shot. You can't put it
Right.
back in. That's and depending on where it hit, there we go. Um, a couple of things that come to mind, and I heard this recently. I want to pick your brain on it.
Sure.
When somebody, now let's go on the defensive.
Okay.
Somebody says something to you. It's kind of hurtful.
Mm.
I heard that you can say 5 words or should say 5 words to put it back on them. 5 words are, do you really mean that? Do you really mean that?
Mm.
Because now it's back on them after they've said
Yeah.
something. Because
Right.
sometimes I'm thinking, not maybe you do, you blurted it out, you said it, here you are.
Right.
Did you really mean it? And now it puts it back on them. What are your thoughts?
So I think that's a great way. I think that the challenging part to that is when you're in a triggered state or you're in a really a high emotional state to be able to have that kind of internal self-control to say, do you really mean that? I think it's a great way to do a check-in. And it's kind of like using the language, what I hear you saying is, just so that you could kind of get more clarification. I think the problem lies is where if we're in a state where we've been triggered or somebody has really hurt our feelings, we might not be able to use that word to be able to say, did you really mean that? And I think that I would hope that the majority of the responses would be no, I'm sorry, I didn't really
Hmm.
mean that. And it's being able to have that conversation with somebody. And again, situational, because if you're in a toxic relationship with somebody who's really abusive, and really weaponizes language for control, which is the underlying meaning. That's the reason that people are verbally abusive is they want to control you in whatever form that looks like. And so I think that if you what I want to caution people about using that, is that really what you meant, is really be mindful of the person that you're saying it to, because if you're in a toxic relationship with somebody who's abusive, you might not want to be challenging because you're not really sure what that next step would be for them. I think in a regular conversation with somebody that doesn't have a history of being toxic or abusive, I think that's a great way to ask for clarification.
Mm. And I'm thinking too, if you say that to someone, do you really mean that? And they fire back, yes. My
Mm.
reply to that, quite honestly, as I think this out, is nothing. I would just
Right.
look at them like,
Mhm.
and let them take it away. Like,
Right. 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 And so, I mean, the thing with verbal abuse is similar with the bullying and similar with the teasing is that if you don't give it any energy, then the other person doesn't really have that ammunition to kind of keep coming at you with it. So I think that if you're able to not give it any energy, and again, that's kind of age specific, because a child isn't going to be able to not give it any energy if their mother or their father or somebody else is belittling them or saying mean things to them. They're going to absorb it a little bit differently, I think. But as an adult, if you're able to just say, okay,
Yeah.
sometimes that's just a simple response. Okay. I mean, that's not confirming or denying. That's really just making a blanket statement of, okay, well, I mean, you have a right to your opinion.
Yeah. And that's it. But you know what? Like we said, got to believe more times than not, people don't mean really what they say.
Right.
It comes out of anger, trigger, just release, whatever it may be. And
Mhm. Mhm.
you're making them think, "Oh, I really didn't mean that. I want to look like I did, but no, I really didn't mean that." But fundamentally, before any of that takes place, is all of us think before you act, think before you talk, think all of that. We don't. We just blurt it out there. We don't think about the impact it might have, right?
Right. So one of the things that I teach my clients all the time is, stop and think about what is your intention before you say it. So sometimes if we can ever have that moment to pause, and I think we've talked about pause quite a few times on the show, because it's such an important skill, and it's such an
Mm,
important tool when we're communicating, is to be able to stop and pause and really think about what is the intention before we say it. Sometimes the things that we say and their intention behind what we want to say, if we can really think about how that's going to land, or how that person is going to perceive it, it changes for us on the way that we deliver it. And
yep.
it's similar to exactly what you were saying, which is, did you really mean that? Except you're going to say it to yourself. So you're going to take that pause and say
Uh,
to yourself, what's my intention? Do I really mean to come across as angry or belittling or, condescending? And what's my end goal? Am I just angry? Am I saying it because I'm angry? And is there another way that I can express being this angry and be able to articulate my words kind of a little bit differently? Because you never know when the last thing that you say something is the last thing that you say something. And so I
yeah.
think that it's really important that, we all globally just take a minute. And sometimes what we say, even if we were to go back and say, what is my intention? We would still say it the same way. And that's okay,
Mm,
because we've thought about it, and we may say something that another person perceived differently, and then they react or act a specific way as a result of that. That onus isn't always on the person who's delivering the message. And
mm.
I think that's important, because sometimes we have to say hard things. Sometimes we have to give people choices or ultimatums because we're in a situation that's not good for us. And even if that's the last time that we say that, sometimes, that's okay. We have to say those hard things to defend ourselves. So I think that's an important message that I want, especially in lieu of, how challenging, the temperature right now is out there with everybody who's struggling to hear and receive and say things in communication wise. So it's important to know that I don't want to encourage people to not say or defend themselves or say things that they mean
Yep.
because of its outcome. So I think it's important that we just are mindful of how we say things, and what is our intention for that. Because if our intention is to hurt, to control, to belittle, to put down, well, that's not okay, because these are people that we love, these are friends, these are, even if it's just be kind.
Thank you for saying that. And I might have shared this like way back when we talked, but it's ringing in my mind. Before you send an email, before you communicate,
Yeah,
verbally, text, whatever it is, put
right.
it through what I call the three filter. Is it kind?
Hmm.
Is it necessary? Is it true? If it doesn't fit all three of those, don't do
Right.
it. Don't say it. Don't send it. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? And I bet you more times than not, when you put it through that filter,
Mhm.
it's going
Mhm.
nowhere. You're not sending it.
Right. And I think it's important to realize that sometimes what comes out of our mouth is a trigger response,
Yeah.
or it's something from an old trauma response, right? Because if you picture the brain and how it works, and the information comes in and goes through, but before it comes out of our mouth, it goes through our swamp of our trauma. And sometimes what comes out of our mouth isn't really what our intention is. It's based on all the swamp that it's gone through to come out, and that doesn't always sound very nice. And
Mm,
so keeping that in mind too, if you know that there's a specific situation or event that's triggering for you, then you want to be super mindful whenever you come across that you're going to stop and pause before you say something, because sometimes what comes out is just really hurtful and painful to that other person. You can't take it back. You can't reel that back in. Once it's out there, it's there, and that other person is now going to continue to experience that over and over again, because we ruminate, right? That's what our minds do, is we ruminate over and over and over about things that people say to us.
mm,
That's really impactful on our self-esteem. It's impactful on our ability to leave a relationship, the toxicity of things. And then sometimes we then regurgitate it. And then it's like, I downloaded this little meme that I hung up in our office this week, where there's a mother standing behind the kid, and her tongue is coming from her mouth into the back of the child's head and out his mouth. And then there's a little boy that's standing there. And I thought, wow, how impactful is that? And so it was like a little cartoon thing that I hung up in our conference room, because just last weekend, a weekend full of AAU games, and just listening to what some of the parents were saying to the other team and the kids, it was astonishing to me that parents, adults, just really don't have that ability sometimes to stop and think. We're at an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old AAU game, and these parents are just spouting off all of these really horrible things
oof.
to some of the kids. Yeah, I mean, it was just, we were out in Rhode Island, and I had gotten, I was trying to get the better angle of the game, and I happened to be standing in a group full of other teammate parents. And I just turned around and I said, all of you should be ashamed of yourself. You are all what is wrong with society today. How can you stand there and say those things to other children? And there was like 8 or 9 of them, and they're just standing there staring at me. I'm like, that's just not okay. You should all be ashamed of yourself. They can hear you. I mean, and this is the society, this is, how would you feel if somebody said that to your child? And so I think just in all of these things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, it's really made me, super sensitive to wanting everyone to be so mindful of words and what they're saying, and how it impacts other people.
For
You know,
sure.
it's just,
Like the stories are ongoing. As you're saying them, now they're coming back in my mind of talking to people, even in the last year, of parents going to games and then
mhm,
what has transpired, other parents yelling at the coach, these words, and who's listening? Kids. Is that the example we want to send?
right. Right. And we want to, so our job as parents is to protect. Our job is to protect our children, to protect other people. And that's not specific to the children that we gave birth to, the children we adopted, the children that we're raising. That's specific to all children. That should be specific globally across the board, is that our job is to protect other people from being hurt from language. And that includes us. And that doesn't mean that if we're angry, it's okay to say something that's mean, because even if we apologize, that other person can't unhear it, because it had to have been a thought in your mind. I mean, imagine being 6, 7, 8 years old and having your parent tell you, that they hate you, or that your daddy doesn't love you and that's why he's not visiting. And I mean, imagine how that child can then internalize that something's wrong with me. I did something wrong. Or what is it that is about me that my dad or my mom doesn't want to have part of me? Or even siblings saying these things. It's so important that we teach our families, and, role modeling, and the importance of just always being mindful of the things that we say, our actions, a scoff, a laugh, a smirk. I mean, all of those are just, they might not be as impactful as a word, but they're just as meaningful, right? The
Yeah.
message gets across. No matter how you look at it, the message gets across.
How do you work with somebody that comes for therapy, and part of what they got going on is they've been verbally abused. How do you
Mm,
work? How do you work? Because it's the other person that's doing the abuse. How do you work
right.
with them?
Right. So if the person is still in that toxic abusive relationship, what I would do is empower them, right? Just to teach them the importance of not giving it energy, of walking away, of creating a safety plan and therapy with them, of what happens when your partner or your husband or your parent is saying things that are negligent. I mean, if it's a child, obviously that's a fileable offense. So that the first thing that we're going to do is file a 51A and have that investigated to make sure that we're keeping the kiddo safe. But if we're talking about somebody who's an adult and they're in an abusive relationship that's ongoing, it's teaching them to how to set good boundaries and how to not engage in that. And, realize that, there's a variety of other things that are going on with that other person and the reason that they're targeting you. And if we don't give it energy and we don't tolerate it and we don't allow them to treat us that way, then we can set boundaries and then walk away, stop, leave the relationship. Typically, when you're within a relationship with somebody who is verbally abusive, it sometimes can lead to other types of abuse, physical abuse. I mean,
Mm,
it doesn't, sometimes that control doesn't stop there. And that other person is trying to control the whole situation. So you want to be able to take a step back. And I think it's really important to have some protective factors in place and safety planning, which is really, really important for us to all have that safety for ourselves and not to internalize it. And then for the clients who are adults or out of that relationship that are still ruminating in it, it's helping them to understand the trauma in which they had to survive and understanding the reasons that that other person may or may not have said those things regardless of what their intentions are. How do we then build that internal armor to protect ourselves from it moving forward? It is
wow.
really important.
And great point. And thank you for saying it, that the verbal abuse can lead to something much more serious. It's already serious, but
Right.
what there's anger, there's
Mhm.
abuse already taking place, and that can escalate to something more. Um, I'm glad we talked about this today. I really am.
It's important, and I want to encourage everybody when I say it's important to stand up for yourself. Please, please, everybody be careful. I'm not saying that you should stand up for yourself if you know that that person that is being verbally abusive has a history of being physically abusive. So that's really important. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is abusive and is toxic, and you're afraid to stand up for yourself, my suggestion is not to supersede that. It's to get out of that situation. It's to leave that situation. It's to find your safety planning in a therapy session, safety planning with friends and family to make sure that you know what to do if you need to get out of that situation. Call 911, leave, call a friend. So I want to make sure that I'm really clear that advocating for yourself is okay when you're in a situation if you're safe. I would never want anyone to advocate for themselves if they don't feel safe because
Mhm.
it's so hard to predict what the other person is going to say or do.
And what I'm getting from you
Does that make
is
sense?
100%. It's planning or planting the seed in the back of your mind. All right, I'm in a situation. It's toxic, verbally abusive. I'm trying to navigate through it, but deep in your mind, if things go one stage further or two stages, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to do. Having a plan on your mind. Wow.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing that's helpful for us too is if we can, so if somebody said something about us or to us or against us that was really hurtful and we're ruminating about it. So it's having that other voice come in and say, that's their narrative, that's John's narrative, that's Steve's narrative, that's Felicia's narrative,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's not my narrative, that's not real, that's not for me, that's not who I am, that's not what I represent. That's their narrative. And so if we can remove the personalization of those words, it could help us to build some strength internally to be able to not have it be so emotionally impactful. So it's separating what that other person is saying and building an armor up against it so that when it comes in, it has something to kind of bounce off of. So we're not just absorbing it all and personalizing and believing those words, because that's not who we are. And it's going back to that internal self-talk of positive affirmations. And, that's mom or dad's narrative. That's not my truth. That's not my reality. Or, I know that I'm a good person, and reviewing the things about us that we know are really good and that we can hold on to help us to feel better.
You're up in Massachusetts, but you can work with other people on a therapeutic level virtually, right?
Yes, correct.
Excellent. What's your website again?
It's newbeginningswc.com.
Thank you for today. Thank you for talking about this. It's something that needs to get talked about. We take it for granted how impactful it is, abusive it is. Well, it's just words. No, it's way more than that. Sherri Ann,
All
thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it.
right. Thank you so much.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.